here's what I think. There is something bigger going on here. There is something we're not being told. This does not stack up. Whether there is some gigantic, super embarrassing favour that has been done, which we don't know about, or whether there is something going on within the Starmer family, which, you know, they're entitled to their privacy. I don't know what it would be, but it feels to me as if there is some kind of, not necessarily scandal, but something is being covered up here.
Keir Starmer is unravelling right before our eyes, and honestly it stirs a sense of justice. He once stood as the beacon of hope for the Labour Party, but now he watches in despair as his political career crumbles. What makes it even more painful is that no one seems to feel the slightest bit of sympathy for him. His own party has distanced itself from him, as if he has become an outsider, and this sense of betrayal is particularly poignant.
Hello, have you signed the petition?
Not yet, no, because you know me, I'm not very technical at stuff like that. I was going to start differently, but it's your show, you do what you want.
Well, let me just reassure you that it's actually really easy, because I don't normally do these things either, but I thought this thing is getting ahead of steam, and I think we've all got to pile in. And
all right, let me play devil's advocate. Let me play devil's advocate. I am absolutely with you and the millions of people who think this bloke is a disgrace. He has no plan, he has no conviction, he has no backbone. I don't buy this government at all. It makes me furious with the shambles that was the Tory party. But we cannot fall for the BS that the King is going to get involved. This is not going to change the government. Yes, it will absolutely, Isabel, say to this government, globally and at home, not very popular. It's not going to make any difference, though, is it? Come on. Speaking of uniting people, let's examine how Starmer transformed Labour's internal divisions into a full-blown civil war. He vowed to bring the party together, yet somehow he has managed to alienate almost everyone. Jeremy Corbyn's resignation was more than just a political shift. The left despises him, the right regards him with skepticism, and the centrists, paralysed by fear, are too preoccupied with concealing their dissatisfaction to respond at all.
No, I mean, I'm not pretending it's going to actually in some way trigger an election. I mean, unless... So there are about 40 million people who are eligible to vote in this country. So unless basically most of them sign it, I can't see it's going to make it actually going to force an election. And in fact, even if the entire adult population signed it, it wouldn't legally force anything. But what it is just a big message, isn't it? It's just a message to this lousy lot about just how much they are utterly despised by how many people. And I think that's...
But that's not the end of it. Like any political catastrophe, a scandal erupted that left the public reeling. Starmer, regrettably, neglected to mention the notorious $4,000 hotel room charges. Yes, this is the same individual who once arrogantly criticised others for their lack of transparency, yet now finds himself ensnared in ethical dilemmas. His hypocrisy and anger not only confuse but also incite genuine anger. For years he has pointed out the errors of others, and now, like a child, he revels in his own lavish privileges. How does he rationalize this? Oh, that's right, he doesn't. His silence isn't merely avoidance, it reflects a cowardice that has become his sole means of escaping accountability.
I mean, just ridiculous. I mean, Nigel Farage is one of the most popular politicians in the country. That's why millions of people voted for him and his party at the last election. It's not their fault that the voting system doesn't reflect that in terms of the number of MPs. Nigel Farage is always going to be a much more exciting, interesting, dynamic, charismatic, bright, engaging and yes, divisive figure than Keir Starmer. I mean, I know who I'd choose to have dinner with.
Starmer's silence isn't just surprising, it's infuriating. The public is seeking answers, yet all they receive is a political shrug, as if nothing is amiss. Meanwhile, his approval ratings are plummeting, and the party he is meant to lead is on the verge of total collapse. This isn't merely about one person's failures. It's about the damage he's inflicting on the entire party. Labour needed a leader capable of rebuilding trust and challenging the Conservatives effectively. Instead, they ended up with Keir Starmer, who somehow found his way into that role. Now, Boris Johnson appears almost like a paragon of honesty amid this turmoil.
Look, I remind myself that very many people didn't vote Labour at the last election. I'm not surprised that many of them want a rerun. That isn't how our system works. There will be plenty of people who didn't want us in the first place. So, look, what I focus is the decisions that I have to make every day. And it's a bit like opposition.
Surely you want us, the public, to trust you, to like you, to think he's the man for the job, he's doing what he needs to do. Your approval rating is lower than Nigel Farage's right now.
The thing is, if you make your mind up, as I have done, that we're going to do the difficult things first, then I think it's inevitable that people do feel their difficult decisions. I mean, I understand that.
Let's take a closer look at what truly lies behind this shocking scandal. If Starmer can't keep track of a gift valued at an astonishing $4,000, what other serious issues might we uncover? The public isn't naive. They piece together the facts and see the bigger picture. And what do they see? A man who speaks about ethics with an air of arrogance, while secretly concealing his own unsavory secrets, as if this is perfectly acceptable. His previously questionable judgments have now completely lost their credibility and trustworthiness, and that's what's truly alarming. This is all unfolded at the worst possible time. Insiders within the Labour Party are reportedly in a state of panic, fearing how this scandal will impact the party's prospects in the upcoming general election.
Understandably, a lot of people who were unhappy about the prospect of a Keir Starmer government have obviously not had those fears allayed in the last few months, and therefore would like another do-over. But unfortunately, that's not how our democratic system works.
And it is always worth reminding ourselves that more people voted for Jeremy Corbyn than Keir Starmer.
Right, exactly. And in 2070, in the election before that, I think Labour got something like 40% of the vote, very nearly, obviously won. And so therefore, it's an odd system we had. I think we had a very fractured election this time round, on kind of a four-way split, and actually that's going to continue to be the problem, I think, going forward for Labour is they've got lots of constituencies where they didn't get a huge percentage of the seat, percentage of the vote to win that seat, but got enough to get over the line, and that's actually what they're going to have to try and sort of protect. And this kind of anger early on shows that there's going to be perhaps maybe a more coordinated attempt to unseat them next time.
Keir Starmer's career is in freefall. Once celebrated as the shining knight of the Labour Party, he now struggles to garner support from a mere 22% of the population. Yes, you heard that right. An embarrassing 22% approval rating. From being a beacon of hope for Labour's future, he has turned into their greatest liability. Starmer built his reputation on grand promises of honesty, unity, and transparency. These buzzwords might sound great on a fancy motivational poster, but the reality is that none of these commitments have materialized. Instead, we are left with a man who has redefined incompetence and alienated everyone who once believed he had a clear vision.
Yeah, well, actually, that petition itself was the one that actually prompted the Parliament to bring in its own petition system, which is the one that people have been doing now. Previously, it was sort of ad hoc, whereas it was an official route, and essentially, if you get past 100,000, then you get a statement, and if it gets to like 1 million or 100,000, it gets a debate in Parliament, essentially. And so, yeah, this obviously is well past that. Whether that debate will take place or how long it will take for that debate to take place, I'm not too sure. But we have seen big petitions before. I think the one to revoke Article 50, the second referendum campaigners, I think they got something like 6 million people signed that, and obviously that didn't end up with Brexit being revoked. So no, it doesn't necessarily always lead to change. But I think it's kind of interesting. I think your point at the beginning was right. That an awful lot of people did not vote for this government, and therefore, understandably, were angry anyway, and so are likely to continue.
The issue is that they are currently in power, and this was achieved through deception. Society has run out of patience, weary of their lies and manipulations. Starmer's empty promises and blatant dishonesty have pushed people to their limits. Now the people of Britain are demanding to be heard, and their voices must resonate. Thousands of petitions are flooding in because, let's face it, no one wants to be dragged into an even deeper pit of suffering by this individual. Britain deserves a leader who is engaged and capable, not this aloof man who only brings chaos and turmoil. Starmer, take the hint. We want our country back, and it certainly won't be under your leadership.
And Starmer will get challenged on this every time he's interviewed over the next few days. And so will any other cabinet secretary. Speaking of others within the fold, assisted dying laws risk a sitting law risks state offering a death as a service. According to the Justice Secretary, this is Shabana Mahmood, strongly opposes assisted dying. There seems to be a bit of I don't know whether there's a bit of a sort of behind-the-scenes cabinet decision on this one, Alan, but there's not all of them. Liz Kendall has a different view, but Wes Streeting, I mean, goodness me, he's the Health Secretary. Now, Ms Mahmood and others have come out saying not really behind this, which I think surprised a lot of people, because there was a sort of sense that Labour politicians would be very pro this.
Mm. Yeah, and I think it's an example of one of the reasons why putting this forward as a private member's bill through a backbench MP, Kim Ledbetter, rather than being a piece of government legislation, present...
Do you recall Brexit? Of course you do, but it seems Starmer has forgotten. Initially, he was advocating for a second referendum, much like an optimistic gambler who believes that doubling down on a losing bet will rescue him from disaster. Then, without warning, he shifted his stance and claimed to respect the outcome. But did he truly respect it? If by respect you mean contorting himself politically to protect his image, then perhaps. Instead of garnering support, he has ended up alienating both sides of the debate. What do you think about this video? Share your thoughts in the comments. See you soon.